Around a month ago, I made a video on a YouTuber called Pegasus Chess. I called him out for not only cheating, but luring in unknowing viewers using fake credentials and getting them to pay for his coaching. Most of that video was about the cheating side of things and the evidence for it. Just to update you on that, by the way, he is still uploading videos and has not addressed the situation at all. He even self-closed his Leechess account that got permanently banned and opened a new one called Coach Pegasus. But I do think it was abundantly clear that he was cheating, and we don't need a follow-up video on the cheating side of things. However, there is one thing that does need addressing. I didn't really touch on this too much in my last video, but watching his content is literally a one-way ticket to never being good at chess. I am really not exaggerating here either. I've seen people with a rating of 500 give better advice than this guy. Due to his channel boasting almost 6 million views, it's absolutely undeniable that at least a few people have gone to his channel and take the advice for gospel, and they're currently stuck in a rut where they can't improve. In today's video, I'll be going through some of this terrible advice and fixing it. So everyone that's watching this video can walk away with something new that they've learnt and they can apply to their games. Before we do get into today's video though, if you do like my videos and want to help support my content, feel free to check out my coaching options on my website. Coaching is certainly not necessary to becoming a great chess player. However, if you're not someone who has all the time in the world to spend training and studying, coaching will absolutely save you years of time trying to do everything yourself. You can use code FIRST at checkout to get 25% off your first lesson, or book 4 lessons in advance to get the 5th one completely free. If you want an alternative option, you guys can feel free to join my Discord, where you can collaborate with higher rated players who can help you get to your next rating goal. But enough of that, let's get into today's video. Pegasus Chess tip number 1. Quit using openings. Funnily enough, this might be the worst piece of advice out of everything on his channel. Essentially, what Pegasus Chess is suggesting here is that in the opening, you should just castle as quickly as possible and then just play the middle game. This is the literal advice he's giving. There's no rhyme or reason for it. He just believes that learning middle games is more important, and therefore you shouldn't bother learning openings at all. Yes, this is the same channel where he is going on about how great the triangle defense is, which is an opening. It's also the same YouTuber who is selling a book on Amazon showing off his opening, which was absolutely not invented by him, but he stole it anyway and named it after himself. I will never understand people who tell beginners to not learn openings. I do understand people who say don't learn gambits, because if you learn a tricky or trappy gambit, you are relying on the opening. If they don't fall for the tricks or the traps in your gambit, you won't know what to do and you won't really have any middle game plans. However, if you play the Catalan, for example, you only have to learn a couple of moves of theory and understand the middle game plans and you're set. You don't even really need to memorize the entire opening. If you refuse to learn openings, you will be tricked by some kind of trap literally 1 in every 4 games. Why? Because some opening lines literally prey on people that don't know the moves. They lead you into a specific line where the most intuitive move will lose you the game. So if you didn't know the moves of theory, you'll just lose immediately. That is literally the entire point of a trick or a trap in chess. Not only this, but learning openings gives you all of the tools to become a better middle game player. Even if you don't memorize all of the moves, learning an opening allows you to understand the roles that certain pieces on the board play. You know which pieces are your strong pieces and which pieces can be traded off. You also know what pawn breaks to go for and what the ideal pawn structure should be in your position. You save so much time knowing these things in advance than if you had to calculate them all in every game that you played. I'll literally delete my channel if you guys can comment one notable grandmaster who made his career off of going into games not knowing any theory. Literally every grandmaster who is serious about chess knows opening theory to a T. They might have some dubious lines that they've prepared beforehand, but that is different than not knowing any theory whatsoever. The moral of the story is openings are very important. And speaking of openings, today's video is sponsored by ChessMind.AI. ChessMind.AI is a next-generation AI-powered chess improvement platform. Not only does ChessMind have completely free puzzles, but they also have a wide range of courses you can select from for less than $5 per month. All of the courses are handcrafted by Chilean Grandmaster Mauricio Flores and are designed to make you a master of any opening variation in around an hour. They perfectly balance top quality theory with ease of learning to take the boring out of any study. Once you've completed these opening courses, you can either play puzzles deriving from said opening, or dive into their AI integrations which quiz your knowledge on what you've just learned. The AI acts as a replacement for a coach, asking you to find characteristics of certain positions and explain the advantages and disadvantages. You can check out ChessMind.AI with my link in the description, where you can also get 30% off your subscription. Anyway, thank you for respecting the hustle, and we can get into the rest of this video. Pegasus Chess tip number 2. Don't attack. The second step to becoming a great chess player, according to Pegasus Chess, is to not attack your opponent. I swear to God, this is absolutely hilarious, so let me show you the first 7 seconds of this video so you guys can see exactly what he says.
One of the biggest mistakes that I see so many chess players make is that they try to attack their opponent.
To save your ears from bleeding, I'll paraphrase what he means in the rest of this video. He's basically suggesting with perfect play, every game of chess is a draw. You cannot force a win in a game of chess, and therefore we need to play waiting moves that improve the position until our opponent makes a blunder. This is literally the advice given in this video. Don't attack your opponents because they'll probably make a blunder anyway. Once they've blundered something, you need to convert into an endgame and win it from there. He says a bunch of wildly incorrect things in this video, and his evaluation of the position is completely wrong on many fronts, but if I went over every single thing, this video would be over 20 hours long. So the first problem with this piece of advice is that following this ideology, when all of your pieces are in the perfect positions, are you supposed to just move your king back and forth? There are only so many minor improvements that you can make to your position before you are actually forced to attack your opponent. In saying that, even just developing a piece is technically an attacking move. The whole point of development is to bring all of your pieces closer to the enemy territory to attack it. Development is just a phase of your attack. But let's pretend that we've removed the part of our brain that sees that as logical. What happens when our pieces are in the perfect places on the board and our opponent still hasn't made a mistake? Are we supposed to shuffle our king back and forth, or do we finally break the rule that is being explained in this video and only attack when it's extremely obvious? Okay, well, it's all well and good me saying how stupid this advice is, but what should we actually do instead? Well, it's actually quite simple. What I really need to teach you is how to make a plan in chess. The plan showed in this video is simply don't attack your opponent. So in place of that idiotic formula, we need a one-size-fits-all plan that everyone can use. First of all, you should be somewhat familiar with the average middle game plan based on what opening you play. If you don't know what these plans look like, go on YouTube and search your opening and then speedrun. This content is free, and watching a few hours will give you plenty of ideas to apply in your games. You essentially need an arsenal of attacking ideas per opening and an understanding of the roles each piece plays in each attacking idea. For example, in this London system position for white, what should our attacking plan be? Well, typically, when we have developed all of our pieces to good squares, the way to unlock our attack is through a pawn break. This position has a very obvious pawn break in e4, threatening to open the e-file and get the rooks involved. We want to make some kind of change to the board that works in our favor. Why does opening up the e-file work in our favor? Because we can get our rooks into the game through this file to attack the enemy king whilst black cannot. Here's a short continuation of what a preceding attack might look like here. Can you see how, because we made a simple pawn break, our attack could progress further in a way that wasn't possible before? Our bishops are both lined up at the enemy king, our queen is aiming for h5, and once the queen moves, our rook can lift to e3 and start attacking the king too. Now, let's look at a position where e4 is not so possible for white. This is a much messier London position, and perhaps one that is more common at the higher levels, with the existence of a black c5 pawn making it impossible for white to push e4 because the d4 pawn would fall. So, what do? We know we need to make some kind of pawn break. So instead of making wildly aggressive moves, let's organize our pieces in a way that lets us successfully break open a file. D takes c5 seems like a good fix to our problem. Why? Because if the d4 pawn isn't on the board, the e4 pawn break can never blunder it. So after queen takes c5, we now have the option to play e4. Be very careful though. In this position, e4 discovers the black's queen attack on the f2 pawn, so we first need to play queen e2 to defend it. After black's top engine move of a4, white can now play e4 to break open the center and let the rooks into the game. If d takes e4, we have knight takes e4, and now you can see the d and e files are both now open for the rook, and we can continue with attacking ideas in a way that wasn't possible before. For all you e4 enjoyers, we'll also look at this Italian game position to demonstrate the same idea. This is a very common position position many e4 players would have had before. We're so early in the game that you probably know how to continue theoretically, but let's apply our principle to help us keep attacking. Our pieces are essentially in the best positions, so where is our pawn break? In this position, I see two ideas we could go for. We could play bishop e3, because if bishop takes e3, we play f takes e3 and open up our rook. But what if they don't play bishop takes e3 and instead play d6? In a perfect world, pushing f4 would be a great move for us. It would open up our rook and give us a new file to work with to attack the black king. So now we do the same thing as before and make this idea possible. Black's bishop currently pins that f2 pawn from ever moving if it were possible, so why not trade it? After bishop takes c5 and d takes c5, we've gotten one step closer to playing f4. Now it's very important not to get tunnel vision on these ideas. You always need to look for your opponent's counterplay, but absolutely nothing stops us from playing a move like knight d2 now, preparing to play f4 and breaking open our rook. Let's say black plays bishop e6, we can now play bishop takes e6, rook takes e6, and finally f4. Now it's important to note that this plan is not perfect, and there are certainly better plans in the Italian game, but this principle still gave us a decent attacking plan to go for that didn't lose us the game and allowed us to continue playing the game in a way that suits our skill level. The game plan is now simple. We will bring all of our pieces to the king side and attack the king down the newly opened file. Of course, principles are made to be broken, so take everything that I say with a grain of salt, but this is a much better middle game plan than just don't attack. Pegasus Chess tip number 3. Don't defend. You might be wondering, how can Pegasus Chess say that the only way for you to become a great chess player is to not attack, when he also wants you to not defend? Well, that's a great question, and it is a shame that in the video where the thumbnail says don't defend, he absolutely has no explanation of why you shouldn't defend. In fact, the game that he actually goes through is an opposite side castled game in the Roy Lopez. Does that mean you should not defend if you're in an opposite side castled game? No. In any game where you or your opponent has forced an opposite side castling game, you should take a moment to figure out whose attack arrives first. This may be difficult for beginners, but generally you can figure it out in a very simple way. Let's take this position out of the Scandinavian defense, for example. How can we figure out whose attack is going to arrive first? Well, there are a few things we need to look out for. First, we look at piece activity. White has two pieces staring at the king, and a knight that can land on e5. Whilst black has a bad light squared bishop, a knight on the rim of the board, and much worse activity. Secondly, we look at pawn storms, and maybe more importantly, the kingside defenders. I actually learnt this from a game played between Fabiano Caruana and Hikaru Nakamura at the most recent candidates, but the side with the more kingside defenders is typically going to stay defending. Why? Because unless the kingside defenders can physically blockade the arriving pawn storm, they will only serve as free tempo for the aggressor. Let's run through what might actually happen in a game. The top engine move of g4, sacrificing a pawn, is a bit advanced, so we'll not even play this move and play the slower h3, supporting g4. After b5, notice how the side that allows their kingside defenders to be kicked will be worse. For example, if we play g4 here, we're too slow, as b4 kicking the knight will win equality back for black. However, if we anticipate this tempo and play knight e4, we preserve our advantage. Likewise, in this position, what if black gets too hasty here and lashed out with b4 trying to break us down too early? Well, then we play knight takes f6 check, bishop takes f6, and crucially we do not lash out with g4 trying to win the race to attack the enemy king, but we play a defensive move in a5, locking up the position so we can go forwards and attack. After something like bishop d7, we have every right now to play g4 to continue our pawn storm. If they continue attacking with c5, we now play g5 and white's attack comes first, with a heavy involvement coming from the kingside defenders, avoiding giving the aggressor any tempo. Something important to note is that even though the engine gave us a +1 advantage throughout that sequence, no matter how winning these positions are, we will always have to find the balance between offense and defense. Move 12, knight e4 is a defensive move, anticipating an attack from black. 14, a4 is a defensive move, freezing the structure and stopping the attack. Even though we were winning this opposite side castling game, we absolutely had to play defensive moves in order for our attack to flourish. Hilariously, there are literal examples of this in the game Pegasus Chess analyzed that he just didn't realize were defensive. Move 11, knight c3 is a defensive move, forcing the active knight off the board for black and allowing them to double your pawns. 14, queen h3 is a defensive move, retreating the queen to safety. 17, bishop e3 is a defensive move, defending an attack on the f2 pawn, to prevent it from being captured. So even in a cherry-picked game played by one of the greatest minds in all of chess, Capablanca still needed to make several defensive moves in order for his attack to flourish. Not to mention, when this game was played, if Elo systems actually existed back when Capablanca played, he would be 2,700 Elo. His opponent, Albert Pulvermacher, would have been around 2,000 Elo. So we're talking about Raul Jose Capablanca, who was one of the greatest chess players to ever exist, versing a 2,000 rated player with a total of 7 games in recorded history. The moral of the story is you need to find the perfect balance between attacking and defending, even if it's an opposite side castled game. No amount of cherry picking will ever indicate that either side has the opportunity to waive their right to defending in any game ever. Pegasus Chess tip number 4. Don't move pawns. At several points in this video, I genuinely had to stop and think, am I being rage baited? In the first 20 seconds of this video, Pegasus Chess clarifies that what he means by don't move pawns is don't move any pawns apart from the D, E, and C pawns. This is kind of funny because in another video where he talks about the semi-Slav defense and how great it is, the main line literally forces you to play with the queenside pawns, specifically the C, B, and A pawns, which completely go against this rule. What he's trying to do is give you a principle on how to not overextend your pawns in any chess game. However, the advice that he's actually giving in the video is complete garbage. For example, what if we're in this Sicilian defense position and it's black to move? Should we not break with f5 here, even though it's the best move? Alright, I forgot we're not allowed to attack. Let's just play king h8 and hope white blunders. This is obviously really bad advice, so I feel that there's no need to explain it further. However, there is actually a really good principle here that I like to teach my students on how they can not overextend pawns in their positions. Think of any chess position like this. If you have a good piece move, play it. If you don't have a good piece move, you have a good pawn move. If you have neither a good piece move or a good pawn move, you're either losing or you have a winning sacrifice. Take that with a grain of salt, of course, there will be exceptions to this, but generally I find that this is a really good principle to follow. Let's apply it to the same position. Do we have any good piece moves in this position? It might seem like bishop e6 is a good piece move, but after queen c1, our knight is actually trapped on the edge of the board, meaning bishop e6 is not a good piece move. So apart from moving our bishop, we don't really have any good piece moves. To free our knight, we must play a pawn move. So let's play f5 and see how the position unfolds. The top engine move is bishop takes h6, and after bishop takes h6, knight bd2 will be played. Now, it's very obvious we have plenty of good piece moves. Moves like rook b8, bishop e6, king h8, or queen e7 are all good piece moves. So let's continue to play piece moves like this until we hit a wall. On move 22 in this game, we've hit a bit of a wall with our development. It's pretty obvious that our pieces can't get much better here. So what do? We absolutely must make a pawn move to make progress. If f takes e4, they can capture back with their d-pawn and open up a file for themselves. This isn't ideal. However, f4 and h5 are both valid pawn moves that make genuine improvements to our position. If f4, for example, and g4, we now strike with h5. If rook de1 just shuffling around, we play bishop f6. And the idea now is to break open the h file so we can put both of our rooks on it. For example, king f1, rook h7, rook g2, king g7, rook e2, rook f h8, knight b2, and h takes g4. This was not even the best line according to the engine, but it's a realistic one that even you could find by using this principle. By prioritizing piece moves first, and once we can't find any more, looking for a pawn move that allows the pieces to progress further, we avoid any risk of overextension in our position. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule. Sometimes playing h3 to give our king a luft is going to be a good move, or kicking the enemy piece away might warrant a pawn move too. But generally speaking, unless there is a principled reason to move your pawn, you should prioritize piece movement first. Pegasus Chess tip number 5. Do not trade pieces. In this video, Pegasus Chess suggests that you should stop trading pieces and your middle games will be changed forever. This is such a generalized piece of advice that it serves no help for anyone watching the video. There are plenty of reasons that you should trade pieces in any position, and telling people that they should avoid it at all costs is just stupid. Take this position in the Roy Lopez for example. Black has a strong knight outposted on the e4 square. With this advice, should we just leave the knight here and avoid playing knight c3 or knight d2 at all costs? Better yet, How should we develop our knight? If it goes to a3, the bishop can trade pieces, and as long as we're following this advice, our knight doesn't have a move to go to. Okay, maybe I'm dramatizing the advice he's giving here, but let's even assume the advice is don't trade pieces unless you have a good reason to. This is still pretty average advice to give beginner chess players. Of course, this is not advice that I would give to everyone, but for beginner chess players, I would genuinely recommend that you trade pieces as long as it doesn't negatively affect your position. I remember when I was 1000 ELO, a big problem that I had was not being able to keep track of all of my pieces. The more I had on the board, the worse I played, because I couldn't keep track of everything on the board at once. So, what should the advice be for people who are like that? Which, by the way, is majority of 1000 ELO players, whether they like it or not. Should we tell them that the best way to get better at middle games is also the reason that they're losing so many? A better piece of advice is just play with as many pieces on the board as you're comfortable with. If you feel that your bishop or your knight will get stuck somewhere on the board, trade it off. If you feel that your opponent's knight is getting too strong in the position, trade it off. If you have any logical reason to trade a piece off on the board, you should just trade it off. Funnily enough, the reason that I got to 2000 ELO in just 2 years of playing chess is because I prioritized trading off pieces. I was very uncomfortable with having so many pieces on the board at once that I just prioritized trading all of my pieces off. To combat the lack of pieces on the board, I heavily trained endgames with just rooks, queens, and pawns in them so I could play well in those kind of positions. Moral of the story is, play the style of chess that you're most comfortable with. Don't keep pieces on the board just because a YouTube video told you to. Play the way you feel comfortable playing chess. Once you gain more confidence and feel like you're becoming a better chess player, trade less and less pieces off the board until you're playing with all of them at once every game you play. Pegasus Chess tip number 6. Push every pawn. Wait, didn't we just— Yep, you would be absolutely right. On the same channel that you were just told don't move any pawns, you're actually also supposed to push all of them. It actually makes a lot of sense now why you can't get better at chess. It's because you can't break the Pegasus paradox and do everything in chess whilst also doing nothing. I don't think I need to explain why pushing every pawn is a bad idea. There's also not advice that I should give you instead of this idea. I should just tell you to disregard it completely. It was also too funny to not put in this video. Moving on to the end of this video, I think the saddest part about all of this is that the Pegasus Chess YouTube channel actually started out really good. The entire Pegasus Chess YouTube channel started as an openings channel, where he would give a simplified explanation of a variety of different openings, explaining how you can approach playing them. All things considered, if you watched any of those videos, they're obviously not Grandmaster standard, but it's called simplified openings for a reason, and I feel like it was genuinely decent content. The reality is, a lot of chess coaches want you to stay bad at chess so you will continue to pay them to coach you chess. The moment you pay a single dollar to a person like Pegasus Chess is the moment that you justify it at every turn because you don't want to admit that you made a bad investment. You'll be stuck in this echo chamber forever because no matter how much money you throw at the problem, you're never going to get better at chess, even when you have a coach that is supposedly helping you get there. Whilst Pegasus Chess is an extreme example of this, there are plenty of chess coaches who do the same thing and will deliberately not want you to get that much better at chess. The only way to get better at chess through a chess coach is if they're giving you tailored, personalized lessons that are specifically designed for you. If they give you broad, generalized advice, it's absolutely not going to do you any good. This is why my first recommendation when you're getting a chess coach is to go to your local chess club and ask if there's a local coach. Usually these people are going to be a lot more honest because they deal with people face to face rather than through a screen. It is so unbelievably disappointing that after my last video got over 100,000 views calling Pegasus Chess out for cheating, he did not address the situation at all and just decided to keep on making this garbage content. He keeps deleting any comments accusing him of cheating on his channel and is just going to continue to scam all of his viewers. But hopefully, if you did used to watch Pegasus Chess, now watching this video, you have a decent idea of how you can go on to play chess and apply some decent principles to the way that you play. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about all of this, but apart from that, I hope you all did enjoy this video and learned something from it, and I will see you all in the next video.